second.
I'm waiting for that on-air sign to come on. There it is. Okay, welcome everybody to the June 2nd meeting of the Business and Community Affairs Committee. Today we are going to be talking about added fees on rental cars here in Norman. And I just want to kind of preface the discussion saying that this came to us from a resident, Dan Munson. He delivered this idea in miscellaneous comments at a previous council meeting, and I just, think it's important to highlight that, if you come to council with good ideas, you can get them heard at committee meetings and just really reinforce that citizen process and, happy to get more ideas from citizens. So with that, I think, Ms. Walker, you might have a small presentation for us, and let's just kick off the discussion.
Sure. Okay, so knowing that we were going to be talking about levying a tax on rental cars, or the rental of cars, I should say, I did some looking in the state statute. And you all know our general power is, our authority under the state law is that cities can levy taxes as the legislature can. And we have an agreement with the tax commission that we enter into for them to collect that for us. They are collecting under the Streamlined Sales and Use Tax Act. This, I think, would fall outside of that. The state does levy a rental tax on motor vehicle rentals. So using that authority from Title 68, Section 2701, I think we could also do that. It's just a question of how it would be collected. The state rental tax is 6% on the gross receipts of all motor vehicle rental agreements, as long as they're not rentals for longer than 90 days. It doesn't apply to lease agreements. It doesn't also define lease agreements. So what distinguishes a rental from a lease, I'm not sure. I'm assuming a lease would be longer than the 90 days and rental would be less, but hard to tell. It does not apply to tractors registered under a different section of state law that have a weight of 8,000 pounds or more. It doesn't apply to trailer or semi-trailers. And it doesn't apply to shared vehicles that paid applicable taxes when they were, or upon which applicable taxes were paid when they were purchased. There's a funky provision about how they can make a deduction from their gross receipts, because this is 6% on the gross receipts, for bad debts. So that's kind of interesting. But then it does go on to say that the tax is really paid by the person renting the vehicle at the time of the payment of the rental agreement. So they're paying it to the company, and then the company's remitting that to the state minus the bad debts. Little interesting.
Okay,
So unique, different from sales tax, certainly. To do that, we would have to amend our sales tax ordinance, which would require a vote of the people anytime we're changing the sales tax or adding a sales tax, because it's not part of the Streamlined Sales Tax Act.
Okay.
I think we would have to amend our code and thus the sales tax authorization, or essentially be imposing a new tax. It's not really considered a sales tax.
Yeah, could you classify it as a fee and not a tax? Is this, I know,
I
I'm
think-
playing semantics here.
Yeah, I think that would be difficult because the state does the same thing and calls it a tax.
But, okay,
So I think that would be a challenge.
okay,
The tax rate, I'm not sure if I said this, is 6% at the state level.
okay. Yeah, that definitely throws a wrench in things, having to put it to the vote.
Yeah.
I just kind of assumed this would be not a percentage necessarily, so not a tax, but a $5, $10 just fee added on top. I don't know how you really, I'm gonna say, get around that, but I understand the need to go to the vote for, increasing sales tax, but this is one of those instances that I kind of feel like is, I don't know, maybe outside of that a little bit.
Yeah, it's really not a sales tax. It's more of a,
Right.
It's just a different kind of tax, a rental tax. So it's a little unique in that respect. But I think it could be done. We would just have to go to the voters to get that approved. And I know Jacob's been working on some numbers just based on what we do know about rental cars. I think we don't know the number of rental cars, in Norman, and rented out each month or anything like that, but
Okay.
he's done some estimates based on sales tax data.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and give those. So just went to the Oklahoma Tax Commission and looked up kind of averaged by month from 2019 to 2022. And based off our 4.1% sales tax that we currently have, we're getting about 14,800 a month on average for the last few years from that. So if you got a 5% rate, be about 18,000. 6% is around 22,000 a month.
A month. Substantial amount of money. Okay, would this need to be a standalone question, or could we lump it in with another one of the elections we have coming up in the next year?
No, it could be on, it would be a standalone question. It could be on the same ballot with another municipal election.
Thoughts from
The same
my
election
colleagues here?
So, what other cities do this and stuff like that? You
I-
ever go over that?
I'm not sure. I didn't get a chance to look into that, but I think what you missed is we have an agreement with the tax commission to administer the sales and use tax for the city. This would really be something separate. The state taxes rental cars, and they call it a rental tax. So it's outside of a sales and use tax. So we would have to amend that agreement with the tax commission and see if they would collect it for us, or it could be treated like hotels, hotel, motel, and the city collects that.
It's kind of the way I had thought of it was, or that's what, under the impression, I guess, I had that the idea had come from was that it was like them. Was it Dan Munson?
Yep.
Yeah.
I thought so.
Yeah, and the
But it
hotel
had-
motel
it
tax
was
we
like
took
that,
to the
yeah.
voters.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
my next question.
Yeah. So I think it would probably be pretty similar. There's some language in the statute that specifically authorizes or acknowledges the city's right to collect hotel motel on its own. And so there's not similar language for other things, but I think we would be likely in the situation where we would have to collect it ourselves. And we have a system in place now for that.
Well, I mean, I know we're asking the voters to vote on a lot of things in the next, year or so, but I'd love to see if we could get some movement on this one. The whole idea being that, this would fund tourism efforts and, primarily go to Visit Norman, and other entities that, would help pursue those initiatives. But the idea being that increased tourism would increase rental car sales, which would increase tourism, which, kind of be a self-feeding system there. So I don't know if there's appetite for that for the rest of the council. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and, if this is something worthy of sending to the voters or if it requires some additional study, but happy to have a discussion. Councilmember Schuler.
Sorry, can you reiterate the information about like how many cars are being rented in Norman, or like what were you talking about earlier? Sorry.
I don't have any numbers on like how many cars are rented
Okay.
on average. This is just what we get based on our 4% sales tax from the tax commission they collect. So just the overall sales tax on their revenue.
On rental car revenue.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that averaged out to 14,000 since 2019 all the way up to April of 2022
14,000 per
per month.
month.
Yes.
Okay.
And it can get up as high. I think the highest I see on here is 33,000 and then down to 3,000. So
Okay.
just depending on lots of holidays, football games, things like that, it's going to go up and down quite a bit.
Interesting.
And could you tell if those were Norman citizens renting cars to leave town, or if it was visitors coming into Norman renting cars while they're here?
I didn't
You
see any
couldn't tell
information.
anything about that, okay.
Do we have any idea of like how many rental car companies or like entities are like operating within?
We're down to 2.
Okay. And then I know the university has like a rental pool as well. That they rent cars.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't know if it's just like for the university, but like that is something we might think about. So I don't know, would they be into this process? Like they're not a rental car company, but they are renting it. Like we can rent them like as a department through the university. Like they have a rental pool.
Interesting. Okay, I can look
So I
into
don't
that.
know, like, how would that work? Or would they fall under an exemption because they fall under an exemption for sales tax and
Yeah,
all
they
of that kind of
likely
stuff?
would as a
So-
university, but I'm happy to look into that. I had not heard about that program, so.
Okay. Yeah, just things I was curious about.
Councilmember Holden?
Yeah, I would definitely like to know what other cities do it. What would the percent be? How much would that be? How much more per day would that be on somebody renting a car than it is right now? I know that's really hard to tell because it's like quadrupled, but I did just look the other day
They've come
and
down.
it's gone seemingly back to normal or what it
Yeah.
was before. Because I used to rent a car to go on my long road trips every year, and I would have recently too. Well, I did. Yeah, the city paid for it this time. But the last two long road trips I've gone on, I've taken my girlfriend's car because it's newer. But the lure of taking a rental on those trips is if anything happens, which did one year. It had a problem in Washington State, and we were able to just stop in Seattle and swap it out at the Enterprise there and get another one in 30 minutes, and we were back on the road going. But if it had been our own car,
Yeah.
I'm like, what would we do? Are we just going to be stuck here till it gets fixed? Or, but the extremely high cost of the last 2 years made it prohibitive. But I would be interested to see, is it a $5 more per day equation? Is it $100 more? But those kind of questions I think would be helpful to know who else is doing it. I like the idea of what to use it for to help boost tourism and Visit Norman. And yeah, I'd like to know more information about those details. See where we're at there.
Yeah, I think that's why I favor just like a flat fee instead of a percentage, so it's not variable. You know exactly what the fee is gonna be each time.
What was the number thrown out already? Or
I
is
was
it-
thinking something like a $10 fee, $10 a day extra, again, I'd like to know what other cities are doing and what that kind of revenue that would generate. Obviously, I think it's a kind of a back end equation. We figure out what our target is, how much revenue we want to generate through this, and we back into what the fee is.
In normal times, I say normal, before COVID, it was, I want to say it was $28 a day. I could get it for a week,
Okay, wow, that's cheap.
plus the insurance. I could go to California for a week for $400.
Wow.
And that included the insurance deposit.
So maybe $10.
But
is
recently, it was $1,000. That's
Wow.
why I didn't do it, because I was like,
Sure.
Well, I just rented a car in Colorado for a week and it was about $400.
yeah. So if it's
So-
$28 or something like that per day, adding 10 extra dollars might be
It's a little
too
bit,
much. but-
right. But if it's $200 a day,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And our hotel motel tax is 1%.
And we can't call it a fee.
can't call it a fee, it sounds like.
Right.
I think that's a challenge just because the state does the same thing because, it's their tax.
So do we have a precedence for assessing a flat rate versus a percentage and call it a tax? I mean, can you do that?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that, you stumped me with the precedent. I was thinking through our sewer maintenance fees and things like that,
But that's a
which are
fee.
flat fees, yeah. So no, I don't think we have precedents. The way our ordinance is set up, it's currently for sales anyway, it's set by percentage. So that's something we'd have to look at, I think, a little bit more, just to see if we could even get away with calling it a fee, and if it's not a fee, which I don't think it can be, could it be a flat rate and still be a tax?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, and I don't expect you to have the answer today either, but it's just like, well, okay, it's an interesting idea. And
is.
the other thing I think we really would need to flesh out a little bit more is, I love Visit Norman, but our hotel motel tax supports more than one entity. And, if it's to generate revenue to support tourism and other associated amenities of, having this a destination. Would we want to talk about that a little bit more? I mean, would it strictly be to benefit one entity, or are we looking for it to maybe help enhance other?
Sure. I think the only one that, of the three of, parks, arts, Visit Norman. I just think Parks might be the only one that I don't think directly correlates necessarily. So,
But is there
but
something we're
yeah,
not thinking of?
sure,
Something
absolutely,
new
right.
that we haven't had the capacity to,
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely worth discussion. I want to give it to the entity that can give us the most return on the dollar. So, that's why I immediately thought Visit Norman was such a great fit. Again, increased tourism generates increased fees, and just very cyclical in nature. So, but no, I think you're onto something there. Definitely worth discussing.
If Norman Forward, some of our parks projects are a little more tourism based than
That's
they
that's a good point.
have been,
Yeah.
so.
and, just really thinking outside the box if we're gonna talk about doing this. And, it is a big step to take something to the vote of the people. And, oh my goodness, we have so many, literally we're discussing having a 5-year schedule. That's how many things that are coming forward.
No, I
or could
understand.
potentially be coming forward. So, especially if we wanted to take it to a vote of the people, I think we'd have to really have it fleshed out.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that for me, this one is one of the less contentious questions you could put for. But we all know where we live and the politics of this city. So
We'll think of something.
I agree with that. But I don't think this would have to be. This is not one of those ones that needs a marketing campaign and necessarily a big push. I think it could be lumped in with another question or a few other questions. But delicate balance there.
Yeah. So, I know we've talked a lot about sports tourism and how we've understood that to be pandemic proof. So, I don't know, just think there might be some other opportunities that we haven't thought of.
No, that's a great point. I'll go ahead and ask. Mr. Shim, do you have any kind of update on sports commission or anything like that you want to share?
Yeah, so since the voters passed Norman Forward and we knew these youth sports venues were coming online, we have worked to create a sports commission. The tricky part there is the funding mechanism for that. So as the land was getting nailed down, we kind of put that project on hold, and now that it's moving again, we've created the 501c3. The IRS has approved everything, so all the paperwork is done. The sports commission is created, just waiting to find funding. We're working to try and see if we can create a tourism improvement district, which is similar to a bid with our hotels. But we're waiting on some signatures there. One of our major properties is a federally owned facility, and so getting them to sign a document has proved to be kind of difficult. So this would be something that would allow us to immediately put funds towards the sports commission, work with the operating bodies of each venue to fill in the gaps when they're not being used by our local recs or other things. So for example, in 2023 summer, we're bringing the Beep Baseball International Tournament here.
Yeah, good deal.
It's gonna be at Griffin Park. It's really cool. If you've not heard of Beep Baseball before, Google it. It's blind baseball. So, seeing impaired, visual impaired individuals from all over the world come and the ball beeps and they hit it. And so thousands of room nights associated with this, utilizing the soccer fields when soccer's not going on. So it's a great fit. But one of the things that we have to do to bring something like that in is sponsor the opening night ceremonies, provide some amenities for the refs and other things. So if you bring in a conference, convention, a meeting, the hotels work with them on a lot of those costs, and so the sponsorship or fees asked for from us and Visit Norman are much less to bring in these types of events for sports. There's a higher fee associated with it. The return is still tremendous on youth sports, but we don't have the dollars with Visit Norman funding right now to pay for too many of those things. We have another one coming in this next week. It's a softball tournament, and they've asked that we cover the rental cost of the high school fields in addition to Reeves Park and those. So, it's a couple thousand there, a couple thousand. So it adds up as these tournaments come in. So we would use the dollars to help sponsor things like that, market our fields at conferences and other things to these meeting planners. And we have a framework for a sports commission with budget ready to go even before we knew this was going to be under discussion. So we'd be happy to share that with you all and kind of give a plan of how these dollars would be spent if that's how you decided to direct them.
No, that's really good to know, because I think, yeah, exactly to Councilmember Hall's point, those kind of details will be critical. And, it sounds like almost a perfect fit, if you ask me, so.
Councilman Peacock, as you said, we found out the last couple of years, as the hotel occupancy was just devastated down to single digits, the room nights that we were getting and the recovery that we saw was from youth sports. We always knew they were recession-proof, but they're now pandemic-proof, and we're set to have a crown jewel with 22 soccer fields. It's going to be the biggest complex in the region, with a large number of those being lit fields. We're going to have 14 Diamonds, which is a tournament quality size complex. And then the Young Family Athletic Center, there's nothing like that around here. The Hive in Edmond doesn't have that many. Oklahoma City doesn't have a facility. The Santa Fe Family Life Center doesn't have anything that size. And with Trey's name associated with it, the ability to draw people here from all over, if we have the resources to do it, it's going to be an easy sell. So to me, it's low hanging fruit to try and fill these with venues, knowing that our local residents paid for them and want to use them. So we will certainly just fill in the gaps as needed with something like this.
No, that's fascinating. Perfect, very well-timed conversation, I think. Yeah, I'd be happy with that. Not to mention the impending arrival of the SEC, which I think also is another part of the calculus on this deal. So, no, I appreciate you sharing that insight. That's really helpful. Did you have anything to add to that?
I just, another follow-up question. You said that we have a mechanism in place to be able to, I mean, if we decide to go this route and we would get approval from the voters, that we already have a built-in mechanism to collect it?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the hotels and motels, we have a good system where they remit each month. I believe they're 5% tax on their occupancy, and so we would be wanting a similar system here. That's improved over the years with better communication and meetings with the hoteliers, and with the 2 rental car companies, that seems pretty manageable to establish. So I would think we could do that fairly simply.
Okay, so that's not any kind of an obstacle.
I don't think so.
Yeah. And then the only other, I guess, I just want to kind of think through if we had the ability to do a flat rate, how would that affect kind of the range of what someone has the ability to pay for a rental car? If you're renting a top-of-the-line vehicle, or you're really splurging or out of necessity need to rent a car, is that regressive in any way? I don't know. Just something else to kind of think through.
Sure, maybe it's an opportunity to do a tiered system, if the value of your rental car is X. I think there's definitely some equation there that we could figure out, but, okay. So it sounds like, we need the details, kind of on what funding the sports commission would be. I think some additional, benchmark cities to kind of see, what other people are doing, and then, really maybe what our revenue goals would be for something like this. I think those are 3 pretty key points of data before we could really take this any further. I mean, it sounds like, the only path forward is to go to the vote of the people. And so more data we have to make those decisions, the better.
And just timing.
And timing. Yeah, that's a great way to put it. So Councilmember Schuler.
I was actually just sent a list of kind of what other states are doing in terms of tax on rental cars, just to give you kind of, there's a bunch of different mixes of like $2 per day or a percentage, or like Hawaii is doing $3 a day with valid Hawaii driver's license, but $5 a day without. So like there are a bunch of different kind of mixes. This is just at the state level. And so they range from anywhere from like 1% to over, Texas is at 10%. Right now. That's not including like county, city, other fees at this point. So
I like
more of them are at lower, kind of under us. That's
And the state's already at 6%.
6%, just to give you kind of an idea. So yeah, Texas is at 10% at the state, just looking at some of like the ones around
And this is a state level?
state level.
Okay, just to make sure I heard you right.
Yeah, this is from the National Conference on State Legislatures on their website. So,
I like that Hawaii model that basically says, you know, if you're a Hawaiian citizen, you know, we do get a break.
You get a break.
And so we would be treating, you know, incentivizing Oklahomans to rent cars, but, you know, I don't want to say the penalty, the fee would go primarily towards out-of-state, tax. Again, you know, idea generating tourism, so it's not Oklahomans necessarily paying the brunt of the fee tax.
yeah,
It's,
some of them call it a fee, some of it surcharge, tax.
Surcharge, yeah.
So there's some different, but all the surcharges are percentages too, not.
Got quite a large research folder on
Per day.
fees versus tax versus rate
Yeah.
for utility issues, so feel sure if I dig in there, I can
Yeah,
find some
so
other
there's like,
research.
there's a bunch of different ways that it's being done.
Okay.
In other states.
Okay.
But it does seem that 6% is, we're not the highest, but we're also not the lowest either. And there are, let's see, it says more than 40 states are doing this at this point.
Okay.
And 15 states authorize local governments to impose their own taxes. So,
We're not one of those.
we are.
We are?
We're a
Well,
local government.
I guess. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it basically says we can
Yeah.
tax what the legislature can tax.
Yeah.
I see what you're
So-
saying. Okay.
Well, I definitely think it's worth digging into a little deeper.
I agree. I see some head nodding. So, yeah, I'd kind of,
More questions?
I'd love to, take it to the next step, whether that's coming back for a future BACA meeting or, you know, going to a study session with council. I think we've got kind of consensus in here to, you know, take it the next step. So is there any other comments or discussion around this topic? Okay. Well, you just let me know what I can do to, you know, move this thing along. I think it has some legs and I'd really like to see it come to fruition. So I don't know what the timeline looks like, but I guess, stacking it up.
Gotta start somewhere.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I guess let's look at the election calendar and kind of just maybe see what the timing would look like, so we
Yeah,
know,
this is-
what our runway is and,
I imagine this will be a topic at retreat too, to talk about sort of the upcoming election
a
schedule.
good
So
idea.
that'd be a good time to bring it up too.
okay, so.
And I'll get the additional research done by then.
Okay. Well, that works great. So if there's no other further discussion, I think that's our only item, so this meeting is adjourned.